Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which spreads across the Saharan belt in Africa, especially in Mali and other terrorist movements. One thing is certain, there is a rise of militancy in Africa. When last a militant group blew up an Algerian oil tanker, British Prime Minister David Cameron said it will be difficult to outroot the growth of militancy in Africa. What will be the implications of such a rise, and how did we arrive at that situation? My guest today is a senior researcher at the United Nations University for Peace. Professor Samuel EWUSI, welcome to Globewatch.
Thank you very much for having me.
Just quickly establish to our audience, how did we arrive to having so many militant groups in Africa?
I am not very surprised that so many militant groups are springing up in various areas of Africa. One of the things that you would notice is that militant groups usually spring in peripheral areas of countries which are usually underdeveloped, high levels of poverty, high levels of illiteracy. And so these groups these areas actually provide a recruitment ground for these militant groups. Apart from that, there are geopolitical undertones with regards to the development of militant groups, be it in Eastern Africa with regards to Al-Shabaab, be it in the Maghreb with regards to Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, and be it in northern part of Nigeria with regards to Boko Haram. So there are geopolitical undertones, and each of those militant groups have their origins, have their specific characteristics, have their different modus operandi.
You said that they have their specific objectives. Let's pick two of them and critically examine how they became a havoc to communities. Let's pick Al-Shabaab in Somalia, whose cross effects are being felt in Kenya and surrounding countries, and pick Boko Haram in Nigeria, which of course is a major global discussion topic. What is their philosophy?
With regards to Al-Shabaab, you would remember that Al-Shabaab actually emanates from Somalia, and Somalia has been a failed state with no government for about 20 years. They had a very long civil war which was characterized by warlordism, and therefore it was a failed state. It was a huge area which was ungoverned, and consequently it was a free-for-all. Apart from that, with regards, when you also look at when I talked about geopolitical undertones, there is a triangular problem between Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia.
Which is that triangular problem?
You would remember that Eritrea succeeded from Ethiopia, and then Ethiopia actually invaded Somalia at some point to uproot the Islamic Court Union, which is the springboard for Al-Shabaab. Now, there's empirical evidence that Eritrea is supporting the Islamists in Somalia, while Ethiopia sees Somalia as a proxy war against Eritrea. Apart from that, if you look back, the losses United States had in Somalia, United States also uses Ethiopia as a proxy to fight terrorist organizations.
Operation Restore Hope since 1992.
Absolutely. So United States cannot send military personnel into Somalia, so they use Ethiopia as a proxy to fight their war in Somalia.
So the case of Boko Haram in Nigeria?
You see, Boko Haram is an outshoot of Nigeria's internal political contradictions. You would realize that it comes from Maiduguri, Borno State, where I stayed for about 4 years. Boko Haram actually when I say it comes from Nigeria's political contradictions, it's common to see a Nigerian politician, a government official moving with thugs, armed thugs, who are not members of the government security forces. Now, most of these Boko Haram recruits were formerly thugs of politicians. And when politicians came to power, they abandoned them. And these are people who are already well armed. I am not sure it has to do with an ideology. The ideology is a hanger-on. It's something that they use to propagate a kind of, to make Nigeria ungovernable. Because that's basically it. There are a lot of Nigerian politicians involved in the Boko Haram issue to make sure Nigeria is ungovernable. And thirdly, northern Nigeria is very, very underdeveloped. There are high levels of illiteracy and therefore high levels of unemployment. So these are all issues that have characterized to build up this resentment towards the government.
When you juxtapose Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram in Nigeria, they are hugely dominated by the Muslim population. It is true there are animists in Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab, and there are Christians equally who are part of this umbrella association. But the general public perception is that Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab have Quranic origins. Is there evidence from the scientific community that these are basically religious movements ready to impose Sharia as the modus operandi in Nigeria and Somalia?
Let's not forget that some states in the northern part of Nigeria already have Sharia law. The Islamic Courts Union that came into power in Somalia, which was kicked out by Ethiopia, actually wanted to implement Sharia law. But I think the difference between Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram with regards to any religious inclination is the fact that Boko Haram does not want to establish a caliphate in the northern part of Nigeria, part of Niger, part of Chad, or part of Cameroon.
So what is their problem?
Now, this is Boko Haram's problem. Boko Haram wants to make Nigeria ungovernable. Okay, that's why they would target bus stations, they would target the United Nations building in Abuja. Those places have nothing to do with making people Muslim. You would realize that with regards to Nigeria's internal political contradictions, which I indicated before, there was this gentleman's agreement that a Southerner will govern for 2 terms, and then a Northerner will govern for another 2 terms. But after Obasanjo, Yaradua did not last, and a Christian, who is Goodluck Jonathan, took over. It was believed that Goodluck Jonathan would eventually hand over to a Northerner.
You said that Boko Haram wants to make Nigeria ungovernable, which means that there is somebody who wants to govern Nigeria from a distance. And for us to get that person, we need to understand who is funding and who is arming Boko Haram. From the scientific community, what establishments do you have?
Apart from the scientific community, there are other things that have to be looked at. For instance, if Boko Haram is not getting internal assistance, how do you explain 230-something girls being abducted in a state that is under a state of emergency? These girls must have been transported with trucks, okay? In a state that is under a state of emergency. If we understand what a state of emergency is, that cannot be. Secondly, you would realize that even the government, you see, even the president, before he went to, the Nigerian president, before he went to Paris, you would realize that he could not go to Chibok. If a president of a country is scared to go to a particular part of the country, that is a problem. So Nigeria has a lot of ungoverned spaces. Nigeria does not have complete control over its territorial integrity. And consequently, that's why those groups can function at will. They can function with impunity.
So who funds Boko Haram? Who arms them?
Now, you would realize that in areas which are ungovernable, and considering the porosity of borders in relation to northern Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and northern Cameroon, it's very easy for arms to flow into that area. Most of the arms must have come from the fallout of the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. And consequently, these arms came down to Niger, to northern Nigeria, and some of those arms are being used in Mali as well. So all those areas, you have a lot of ungoverned areas, and more to that, these weapons do not actually, because there is an umbilical cord of kindred between organized crime and insurgency, arms trafficking. All those things have a very, very strong nexus. And that is where all this money is coming from. That is what pays for these arms. And they function with impunity within areas that are ungovernable.
Okay, so countries like Cameroon, Chad, Niger shouldn't fight Nigeria's war the way I understand, because if Boko Haram is a fallout of Nigeria's geopolitical malfunctionals.
With regards to the fight against Boko Haram, I can categorically say that we don't have a dog in that fight.
So declaring war against Boko Haram by the Cameroonian administration was like a faulty diplomatic move. Is that what you mean to tell me?
That's not the complete picture. Why I say it's not the complete picture is because, one, you do not declare an overt war for an organization that carries out asymmetrical war. It has to be confronted covertly. So declaring war means militarizing the areas, okay? But you do not fight organized insurgencies through...
Which means that if countries like Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and other of Nigeria's bordering countries take a military expedition against Boko Haram, they may be moving to the situation of Kenya, because ever since Kenya took weapons and soldiers against Al-Shabaab in Somalia, they have never seen peace. Is that a clear indication of where some of these Nigeria's neighbors are heading to?
It might evolve to that. But however, you would realize that the way Boko Haram operates in Nigeria, it operates in Nigeria by attacking schools, bus stations, government buildings. But in Cameroon, they operate like bandits. So I think Cameroon should confront it like an organized crime. There were highway robbers in the northern part of Cameroon for a long while. Cameroon tackled it peacefully. Don't forget that Nigeria believes that Cameroon has largely ignored the Boko Haram issue, whereas Cameroon had been tackling it in its own quiet way. However, I think that was the right strategy for Cameroon. When it comes to declaring open war with all these neighbors of Nigeria, I think we are being hoodwinked into a situation that, for instance, that's like facing a Frankenstein monster. Mm-hmm. Declaring war on Boko Haram, who is Boko Haram? It does not have military bases. It does not have bases. It is a faceless enemy. So there is no way we can declare war on Boko Haram, tackle it militarily. Boko Haram has to be tackled using intelligence.
Now, you said intelligence. The Paris Declaration, which followed the May Summit on Insecurity in Nigeria, said there should be coordinated joint intelligence sharing and coordination. With this infiltration into the intelligence services of each country, and you know so well that the Nigerian military itself has recognized that there are capacity issues within the Nigerian military. If you share information with a military where there is huge suspicion and intelligence evidence that this information may end up in the wrong hands, how do you share that intelligence information?
I don't think Nigeria is a partner to Cameroon in this fight against Boko Haram. There are huge suspicions between Cameroon and Nigeria, which comes as far back as the Bakassi issue.
But they cooperated so well on the Bakassi issue.
They cooperated so well because there was international arbitration, and the International Court of Justice gave a verdict which Nigeria accepted, and then they cooperated to hand over those areas. But you also have to know that in the northern part of Cameroon, the map is not the territory. It's very difficult to know where the border is. And consequently, that's why I said those are ungoverned areas. So consequently, it's difficult for Cameroon to actually cooperate with Nigeria with regards to intelligence for the following reasons. One, Cameroon has more control over its territorial integrity than Nigeria. Nigeria can easily be termed, especially those huge areas, as a failed state. I would go that far to say it's a failed state, because if you don't have total control over your territorial integrity.
You want to join Professor Wole Soyinka, who says that if Nigeria does not secure the release of the over 200 girls who have been kidnapped by Boko Haram, that country should be seen as a failed state. But the Nigeria administration will be very uncomfortable hearing that from you. Do you want to join Professor Wole Soyinka in confirming that?
Who knows Nigeria better than Wole Soyinka? It is true, because you see, one of the ways of releasing these girls will be through negotiation. And Nigeria, the Nigerian government, is covertly negotiating with Boko Haram. Okay? Nigerian government is covertly negotiating with Boko Haram. But then it has to be, Boko Haram has put forth conditions.
Should there be an exchange of money? Because if you keep on negotiating and giving money in exchange of hostage, in swapping with prisoners, and you give money to Boko Haram, you are technically funding Boko Haram. Should cash always be the first option on the table?
It will be difficult for Nigeria to pay cash in exchange for those girls. But Nigeria can release Boko Haram prisoners, because there has been indiscriminate arrest of people who are not even Boko Haram. That takes you also to an example is the Kenyan situation, where Somalis were arrested and taken to a stadium and frisked. So there could be exchange of prisoners. Boko Haram wants some of its prisoners to be released. Nigeria can do that. It is not unprecedented. United States just exchanged Al-Qaeda militants from the Guantanamo Bay in exchange for one of their soldiers. So it's not
I believe that the pressure on the Nigerian government today is largely unfair, because most people are saying that, okay, it's more than, it's getting to 2 months, getting to 3 months. The Nigerian government is unable to release the 276 girls, something of that nature, who have been kidnapped by Boko Haram. But we all know that America spent 444 days in 1979 to release hostages, 54 Americans, which were taken hostage at the American embassy in Tehran. Don't you think that some of us are very unfair to the Nigerian government when you do such comparison? We are talking about the US, the world's giant.
Yeah, you see, then Nigeria has to be faster in terms of releasing Boko Haram militants, and in exchange for those girls. Because I think if it were top government officials, they would have released them. And you can see the reaction of the Nigerian government with regards to those who are demonstrating for the release of these girls. They are carrying out serious arm twisting against these demonstrators rather than actually dealing with the issue. I don't think that the international pressure on Nigeria is unfair.
Prof, why is it so difficult to combat terrorism?
It is difficult to combat terrorism for a wide range of reasons. Now, most terrorist organizations actually operate in areas that do not have governance institutions, that are lawless. Northern Nigeria is lawless. Somalia is lawless. Afghanistan was lawless. Okay, so if you look at those lawless areas, it's very difficult to actually combat insurgencies that come out of those areas. Apart from that, the insurgencies such as Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab are very, very sophisticated. Sometimes, in terms of intelligence, they are always 1 or 2 steps ahead of the government. It's just like cartels, drug cartels, which apply the use of modern technologies which a lot of governments do not have access to.
let's seek a way forward. I know that in Ethiopia, nearly everybody is an intelligence official. You talk to any taxi man, for those who have been in Ethiopia, like you, for those who have been in Kano, in Nigeria, perfectly have a better mastery than I do. How do we tackle militancy in Africa? Because increasingly, it is a major threat to peace, stability, and development.
That's a very good point. You would realize that Ethiopia has invaded Somalia more than any other country in that region. But then it has been practically impossible for Al-Shabaab to strike Ethiopia.
Why?
You have about 4.5 to 5 million Ethiopian Somalis. So you have more Ethiopian Somalis than Kenyan Somalis, because the Somalis are spread all over Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Kenya. Now, this is the reason. Ethiopia has a sophisticated intelligence setup, so much so that intelligence, information is retrieved through various means, some of the means that you indicated, analyzed in real time, and action taken. Kenya, on the other hand, seems to be more democratic than Ethiopia, okay? Because in the fight against terror, honestly, civil rights will be violated because phones will
Sure,
be
because
tapped,
that is the problem President George Bush faced in the U.S., especially with the U.S. Patriot Act, which led to the creation of the Homeland Security Department. There is a lot of phone tapping. There is a lot of surveillance. At the same time, there is an infringement into democratic values and credentials. So you mean to tell me that to tackle terrorism will say goodbye to democracy, surely?
To some extent, there is no way you can tackle terrorism without using some of those things. It just depends on what you listen to and how it is analyzed. The risk in that is that people can politicize this information. Okay, they can use it to suppress other civil liberties because they might have a lot of information that can be used against potential politically ambitious people. So that information is there. So it just depends on what kind of information is retrieved from people, how this information is used. At some point, if this information is not relevant to the fight against terrorism, this information should be discarded. Now, there's a possibility that Boko Haram might also strike Cameroon. That's what is being said, because we would be tightening the noose. The fact that Cameroon has declared war, it will be very difficult for them to operate with impunity in Cameroon. However, this impedes their operations, and consequently they might react. But then, it will be important for them, for information from these areas, especially maybe any phone call that is made from that area. There should be there should be someone to listen to it and make sense of it. Apart from that, another way of tackling that could be through the use of knowledge, research. I don't think our policy decisions with regards to the fight against Boko Haram is made based on sufficient information.
What is the gap?
The gap is...
You think that the academia in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Chad, in Niger, in the Central African Republic is not doing enough?
I think they're not doing enough. For instance, since the phenomenon of Boko Haram, where are the study groups? Where are the think tanks that provide policy options for the government? In the absence of policy options for the government is left with making a political decision for a security matter. And so the government, I think it's important that the academia form study groups, provide relevant policy options on how to tackle these issues. They have to provide options to the government. And if the government does not adopt it, those options, then we know they did, but it's not there.
Is that somehow a counter-terrorism strategy?
A counter-terrorism strategy has to be holistic. It has to involve a lot of things. A case in point, if you look at the northern part of Cameroon, which is which is at the forefront of in case Boko Haram has to strike. The northern part of Cameroon is much more vulnerable.
But we shouldn't forget the coastal region, because years back we had terrorism-like operations in the coastal regions. You know of the Bakassi freedom fighters. You know of the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta. Because the way people are demonizing the northern part of Nigeria today, it seems to me they have forgotten that years back, before people like Goodluck, Ebele Jonathan came to power, before others came to power, there had been movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, which was terrorizing oil companies along the West African coast, which made the Gulf of Guinea very unsecured, Bakassi freedom fighters and others, because the major focus today is just on Boko Haram and the northern part of Nigeria. What if there is a coastal attack when too much focus goes into the northern parts of Cameroon, Nigeria, Central African Republic and Chad?
That's a possibility in the sense that with a specific reference to the Delta region of Nigeria, you would realize that it came as a result of huge deprivation. The people's livelihood was being threatened hugely. Environmental disasters, people couldn't farm. So their livelihood was hugely threatened and they were abandoned. Considering the fact that there were natural resources in
that is the oil hub of Nigeria.
In that case. And I don't think that problem is not yet solved. And then now there's a problem in the north. That's why I say it is all this put together comes from Nigeria's internal political contradictions.
Okay. Professor Samuel EWUSI Kale, I'm afraid we have to end here. But before we separate, let me just provide some documentation to our audience. Weaving Peace, Essays on Peace, Governance and Conflict Transformation in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It is edited by yourself. We equally have UPeace Africa Policy Series Volume 1/1 December 2013. That is the latest in the market. Governance and Security Policy in Africa, which is a series by the United Nations University for Peace. It's one of those books you would like to read. And equally another publication of yours, Burundi's Negative Peace, The Shadow of a Broken Continent in the Era of Nepal. And you can equally read this book by Dr. Mathieu Mbaraga Abega, En attendant la démocratie africaine. It is one of the best books I've ever read on France's foreign policy in Africa. And in reality, I don't know Dr. Mathieu Mbaraga Abega, but he's a keen viewer of Globewatch from Paris, France, and that is how he sent the book to me through one of the aviation's corporations in the world. We want to thank you very much for watching, and we want to tell you that we received your books with a lot of pleasure. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Charles Ebune, and our guest today was Professor Samuel EWUSI Kale from the United Nations Costa Rica-based University for Peace. Thanks very much for accepting to be guest on our program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome.